21. I have met many geniuses, but they all called me a genius. I still can't quite believe it. How exactly did you manage to defeat that thing? Gwen, now in casual clothes, stood beside Raven and craned her neck toward Lin Yi, who was on Raven's other side. She looked at him with genuine bafflement. Have you forgotten I have super strength? Lin Yi laughed. What exactly is your super strength? Every time I see you fight, it looks like a normal person's technique. It's like, Gwen frowned, folding her hands as she tried to explain, someone like Batman. Wait, you think Batman is an ordinary person? Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. Isn't he? He can't fly. He doesn't have super strength. He subdues enemies because his skills are top-notch, and he has all sorts of gadgets. Just like you. Gwen gave him a serious look, genuinely comparing him to Batman. Lin Yi chuckled, then said, Don't compare me to someone who can survive without sleep, and if we're talking about strength, I could beat Batman with my eyes closed. Gwen and Raven were stunned by his arrogance, but it wasn't entirely empty. Lin Yi wasn't even afraid of Superman. Batman would be nothing to him. And I do have superpowers, Lin Yi went on. You just can't see them. For instance, I have a really strong healing ability. If the timing's right and the enemy is strong enough, I can basically become continuously invincible. He said it as if it were a passive trait. How could an ordinary person steal health from someone who could kill them with one blow? They'd be cut to pieces. Lin Yi really took for granted that everyone understood what Ultra Instinct meant. Continuous invincibility? Is that true? Gwen and Raven's eyes widened. What else? Without that power, I would have died in one hit against that demon. Lin Yi shrugged. He wasn't lying, but his explanation left out a lot. If he included the details, Gwen and Raven might conclude he wasn't even human. So your superpower is that you can be invincible against a strong enemy, but your strength and speed are still human level, like Batman's, Gwen summarized. Lin Yi blinked. Perhaps that was true when we first met, but saying my strength and speed are merely human now is a little condescending. Gwen cocked an eyebrow. I said I have super strength. My speed might be slower, but it's not something an ordinary person can match. Okay, then do you think you can be faster than me? Lin Yi grinned, getting competitive. Gwen smiled back. If we're just comparing pure speed, under normal circumstances, I might be a bit slower than you. Lin Yi stroked his chin, playful. Oh, so you mean you could really be faster than me? Absolutely, Gwen said, hands on her hips. Lin Yi, like Duanmu, seemed unaware of the meaning of humility. I really don't believe that. Maybe your technique is excellent, but in speed you can't beat me without the blessing of a magic girlfriend. I remain skeptical, Gwen said coolly, though there was an unmistakable sparkle of confidence in her voice. Trust me, when you see it for yourself later, you might have trouble accepting it. Are you always this self-assured? Of course. I'm a genius, an unparalleled genius. If a genius doesn't believe in himself, who will? Lin Yi shook his head with mock disdain. True geniuses don't go around announcing they're geniuses. That's because the ones who say that know they're not true geniuses. He smiled and turned to her. You know the saying? What saying? I've met many geniuses, but they all called me a genius. Gwen was taken aback. She had never heard that line before, and it shocked her more than his earlier boasts. Wow, that's incredibly arrogant. All right, you'll understand the meaning and weight of that line eventually, Lin Yi said, finishing the exchange with a casual turn of his head. Then he noticed something else. Hey, why are all these passers-by laughing at me? At first he hadn't registered it, but now gawking people, especially young women, were covering their mouths and giggling. Gwen and Raven stopped and examined him. The aftermath of the demon fight had left them exhausted and emotionally raw, so they hadn't been as critical about his outfit as they normally would have been. Now, though, they snapped back to reality. A white t-shirt, iced tea-colored basketball shorts, no shoes, and he was going commando, striding down the street like he owned it. Performance art doesn't even look this shameless. If Lin Yi weren't a pervert, who would be? Gwen and Raven flushed with embarrassment and, without thinking, grabbed him and pulled him into the nearest clothing shop. Wait, what are you doing? Lin Yi protested, still oblivious. To him, his outfit was merely shabby, not offensive. His taste in clothes was hopeless in a different way. Even the sales clerk behind the counter had trouble keeping a straight face. Gwen and Raven shoved Lin Yi into a fitting room and then set to work. "This one is great. Try this," Raven said. "No, try this one too." They rifled through racks and pulled out every style: casual, formal, gothic, preppy, fresh, brooding, flamboyant. Lin Yi was dressed, undressed, and redressed until the two girls had exhausted themselves. He was treated like a mannequin. The sales assistant couldn't help staring. Lin Yi really was the kind of face that stopped people, a cross between Bjorn Andresen and Takashi Kashiwabara, with a physique reminiscent of Bruce Lee. Who wouldn't be mesmerized? For Gwen and Raven to resist being captivated when he first walked up would have been superhuman restraint. With that gorgeous face and perfect build, dressed like a pervert, it was no wonder the girls on the street had laughed. The sight was absurd enough to break anyone's composure. 2088, bringing home a handsome boyfriend. Wow, what do you think of this? It's perfect. Nothing else compares. I agree. After finally settling on the perfect outfit, the two girls stared at Lin Yi as if he were a living statue. The sales assistant nearby looked even more stunned. Her jaw practically hung open. He had a face that belonged on billboards, the kind of look you'd expect from Bjorn Anderson or Takashi Kashiwabara. "Sir, we also offer professional makeup and styling," the assistant stammered, too flustered to speak smoothly. "No, thanks. I don't use makeup. I like to be natural," Lin Yi said simply, glancing at his clothes. He thought they were pretty ordinary. "No," Gwen and Raven blurted in perfect unison. Their expressions were absolute determination, like pledges sworn. Lin Yi hesitated. "Isn't that a lot of trouble? You'll wait for me outside, right?" "Yes," they chorused. "We don't mind." They stared him down until he sighed and gave in. Lin Yi still didn't get the fascination with makeup. Wasn't it just masking reality? He didn't need any of that. To him, it wasn't about being handsome by some artificial standard. Charm was what mattered. But since this was what Gwen and Raven wanted, he put up with it. Nearly an hour later, the makeover was done. When Lin Yi caught his reflection, he froze. Whoa, who is that? He took a step closer, half expecting it to be someone else in the mirror. Is that me? Really me? I mean, I know I'm okay looking, but this? He laughed out loud. Now I see why women love makeup. It's a whole upgrade. He was impressed and a little terrified. The store's makeup artist, having added the final touch, slumped back in her chair, completely spent. Lin Yi was speechless. He'd almost fallen asleep during the process, but seeing his new look had woken him right up. This must cost a fortune, he muttered, then brightened. I'm not short on money. I'll just cut off a bit of that long gold thread. He thought of the big payoff he'd collected earlier and felt smug about being able to splurge. His main goal now was obvious: use his new look to make Gwen and Raven faint with admiration. He stepped out of the makeup room with a confident walk and a sunny smile. So, do you like it? Both girls went silent, then, oh my God! Before Lin Yi could react, the sales assistant fainted. Gwen and Raven were frozen, stunned into silence and slack-jawed admiration. Lin Yi, half amused and half embarrassed, waved his hand in front of their faces. Hey, are you two okay? You're acting like mannequins. A few minutes passed before they snapped back to life, and then the two broke into excited, possessive argument. I told you, this is exactly what we needed. Makeup was the right call. Nothing beats this. My taste is immaculate. You can't beat my taste, ever. Stop acting like you discovered him first. Hi, he's mine! Lin Yi paid for the clothes, listening to their squeals. At the counter, the attendant announced the total, $18,888. But if you let us take your picture to display in the store, we'll give you a 90% discount. That brings it down to $1,088. Lin Yi blinked. Sure, take the picture. The attendant produced a camera and began firing off shots like a paparazzo. Lin Yi squinted against the relentless flashes. Hey, one photo is fine. Stop. She didn't stop. Under his protests, the store compromised further. Because so many extra photos had been taken, they knocked the price down again to $1,333. Lin Yi grumbled. Being handsome is great, but being too handsome is kind of a curse. I just want to mess up my hair and wash this off. He could feel people turning to stare at him every few steps outside. It was unnerving. He'd always thought that by avoiding show business, he'd escape this kind of attention. Excuse me, can I have your autograph? A high-pitched voice asked from a passing girl. Lin Yi had already turned down a number of similar requests. I'm not a celebrity, he said. Still, Gwen and Raven stood there grinning like they were proud. Gwen had made him stand between the two of them for the walkout. She'd abandoned any pretense of keeping a polite distance. Lin Yi worried that might make Raven uncomfortable, but Raven didn't seem to care at all. Instead, her mind kept replaying the memory of one of his earlier questions. Can we sleep together tonight? Her internal answer was an enthusiastic yes, more than yes. She'd never been so eager for night to come. What exactly they would do? Well, that wasn't for children to ask. But practical matters came first. They couldn't have Lin Yi pulling out gold rope to pay for everything in public. How far is that jewelry store? Lin Yi asked Gwen, shielding his eyes from curious onlookers and flashes. They kept walking, and more people kept recognizing him. Lin Yi had to refuse more autograph requests. Each time, Gwen and Raven giggled beside him like they'd won a prize. He wondered, briefly, whether being superheroes made them immune to ordinary vanities, only to realize that superheroes were still people. They could enjoy a handsome boyfriend and the jealous looks he drew just as much as anyone else. Superheroes are just people with higher stats. Even Superman loved Lois Lane. It wasn't surprising the girls were thrilled to be seen with someone like Lin Yi. Telling them not to be materialistic or worldly would have been ridiculous. 23. Is this reward a bit too generous? As they walked, passers-by furtively snapped pictures of Lin Yi. There was nothing he could do about it. But Gwen, was she serious about taking over 100 selfies? Lin Yi didn't hate taking photos, just taking a huge number of them. No matter how much he protested, Raven and Gwen paid him no mind. Now he understood the jokes people made. Love could be the end of a man's freedom, marriage the grave of a man's life. He was beginning to grasp that heavy thing called responsibility and sacrifice. If you asked him whether he'd confess to Raven all over again, he'd answer without hesitation, of course. Men sometimes court danger. Bravery is a kind of stubbornness. Ha, finally! This the jewelry store you mentioned? They stood before an exceptionally luxurious shop in a busy district. Lin Yi felt both relieved and curious. Do you know someone here, or is it just that this place is famous and you recommended it? Gwen, busy organizing her photos with Raven, looked up slowly and smiled. Both, I guess. In that case, Lin Yi wasn't too worried about being ripped off when selling the gem. Then why are we just standing here? Let's go in. Gwen patted his shoulder and stepped through the door with Raven at her side. Hey, girls. Lin Yi gave a helpless smile and followed. Welcome to Crystal Dust Jewelry. The greeters were impeccable, bowing with practiced 90-degree nods to every customer. From that alone, Lin Yi could tell this must be the flagship of a famous brand. He was right. No sooner had they entered than a familiar figure strolled out from behind a display. Weiss Schnee, the second young lady of the Schnee family. Hey, Weiss. Gwen smiled and waved. Weiss wore her white hair in a ponytail, a distinctive scar near her left eye. She looked about the same age as Gwen and their companions. Lin Yi, standing behind them, found himself an unwilling subject of intrigue. Oh, Gwen, Weiss chirped. What are you doing here? I thought you weren't into jewelry. I can't exactly afford anything in this store. Gwen scratched her head with a sheepish grin. I'm actually here to introduce a customer. A customer? Weiss put a hand on her hip and glanced toward Raven. Do you mean this one? Gwen stepped aside, revealing Lin Yi. Weiss's eyes practically bugged out. Oh my, Jesus! She covered her mouth, forgot her manners, and hurried past Gwen and Raven to stand directly in front of Lin Yi, openly fawning. Has the reward for my lifetime of good deeds finally arrived? God, thank you. Thank you for sending me the pure white angel I've always dreamed of. You're so generous. This gift, it's beyond my wildest expectations. Woo. She leaned toward his face with shameless enthusiasm. Lin Yi had no idea what to say. The girl was uncomfortably forward, almost aggressive in her approach. Hey, stop! Weiss, cut it out! Gwen reached out and hauled her back. Raven used a spell to gently hold Weiss in place. Even so, Weiss kept trying to inch closer. Persistent was an understatement. She had the kind of determination that would get her far in anything she pursued. Stop it! He already has a girlfriend, and she's right here. What? Weiss finally blinked, sobered by Gwen's blunt reminder. Her expression shifted through shock and disbelief so fast it looked theatrical, like thunder, dark clouds, and doom had descended. Ah, no, no, my God, Jesus! Why are you doing this to me? Did I sin so badly in a past life that mankind deserves extinction? Why make me fall from heaven to hell? I'm Juliet in a tragedy. No, I'm the tragedy of tragedies, the spokesperson for tragedy. Lin Yi stared as Weiss flung herself to the floor and wailed. This girl was ridiculous, dramatic to the last. Humph, don't worry, Weiss, you're not the only one hurt by this man. Gwen suddenly smiled softly. Lin Yi and Raven were taken aback. Huh? Weiss looked at Gwen in confusion. Then Gwen continued, voice very sentimental. Actually, you should count yourself lucky. You couldn't have had him from the start, but once, someone offered me sincere feelings. I didn't cherish them, and by the time I realized, it was too late to regret. The most painful thing in life is that, a chance I had, lost because I was late for class, it all turned to dust. Raven frowned and shot Lin Yi a look. No, he really didn't confess to me. Lin Yi threw up his hands, earnestly. Ah, Gwen. We're all poor souls abandoned by God in this world. Weiss threw her arms around Gwen and hugged her tightly. Both were in tears, clinging to each other as if mending the wounds of the world. That smile on Gwen's face, those falling tears, if Lin Yi were honest, he thought, well, if they're like that, making do together wouldn't be so bad. Yuri, he mused, mightn't be so bad either. So can I still sell the gem now? Lin Yi said, feeling helpless. He pulled from his pocket the large, pure red ruby he had pried from the demon bone dagger. Oh! At the sight of the stone, Weiss's sorrow evaporated. She shoved Gwen away as though she were suddenly an annoyance and rushed to Lin Yi. Her eyes shone. I've never seen a ruby of this size and quality before. This is a peerless treasure, she breathed, pinching her cheeks. Lin Yi didn't have a precise appraisal, only a gut sense. It was large and vivid. It had to be valuable. Pigeon blood red, Weiss practically sang. Pure, deep red, no purple, no orange, just incredible. She went into full expert mode, suddenly tiny and animated, dancing around the gem in his hand. The asterism inside is magnificent. The star lines are sharp and straight, like a brilliant constellation. The facets are symmetrical, the surface mirror smooth, and the weight. Please, may I examine it? She asked, hands clasped, suddenly demure and pleading. Sure. Lin Yi smiled and handed it over. Weiss snatched it like a would-be thief and darted to the back of the store, using professional equipment in the appraisal room. Then a scream tore through the shop so loud it startled everyone, like a cry announcing an apocalypse. Weiss burst back into the main room, holding the ruby aloft. She announced as if making a royal pronouncement. This is currently the world's largest, finest, and most collectible pigeon blood ruby. It weighs a full 101.26 carats. The staff and customers erupted in chaos. Whispers, gasps, phones coming out. Lines formed. Faces went pale. Lin Yi stood there, bemused. Come on, guys. It's just a ruby from a broken demon dagger. Really that amazing? If so, I've got 2 even bigger sapphires somewhere. Wouldn't they be even more incredible? 24. Manba out. May I be so bold as to ask where you got this gem? Weiss asked, blushing as she leaned toward Lin Yi. Lin Yi wanted to tell the truth. It would have been the simplest and most direct answer. But if he said the biggest pigeon blood ruby in the world had been dropped by a demon he'd slain, everyone would probably think he'd gone off the deep end from gaming. So he settled on. I found it while adventuring and treasure hunting. Adventuring and treasure hunting, Weiss frowned. Did you go to Mozambique, Myanmar? No. Actually, it was pried off a bronze scepter in an undiscovered Sangxingdui tomb in Sichuan, China. Weiss's expression froze. Sangxingdui? You went tomb raiding? You're not cross-border wanted by China right now, are you? Gwen slapped her forehead in exasperation. Raven rolled her eyes. Lin Yi felt stupid for saying something so explosive. He'd have been better off saying it came from a demon. Wait. Weiss waved her hands frantically. If that truly came from Sangxingdui, I absolutely cannot accept it. Accepting stolen relics will bring huge trouble. Weiss hauled Gwen aside and whispered urgently. Are you sure these 2 aren't dangerous? Did they force you into fencing stolen goods? Gwen sighed. You just made it sound way too specific and therefore believable. Sangxingdui, Sichuan, of course it sounds real. You could have just said we're fugitives, Raven muttered. It's too realistic now. We're about to go to jail. Weiss was frantic. I'm calling the police right now. Don't be hasty. Gwen grabbed her arm. It's a misunderstanding, Weiss. Really. A misunderstanding, Weiss glared. What misunderstanding could possibly involve Sangxingdui relics? You're probably blinded by his looks and a few sweet words, Raven sneered. And you, Spider-Man, this is how you act? Your morals depend on who's handsome. Stop it. Listen to me, Gwen urged. She took a breath and adopted a solemn expression. I know I sound crazy, but please believe me. It's true. Weiss calmed a fraction, trusting Gwen enough to at least hear her out. All right, say it. I'll believe you. Gwen nodded, relieved. That gem was dropped by a demon he killed. The two of them stared at each other, dead serious. Then Weiss reached out and felt Gwen's forehead. You're not feverish? No, I'm not sick, Gwen said quickly. You expect me to believe dropped by a demon? Weiss almost scoffed. Are you joking? Dropped by a demon? What is this, a video game? You weren't drugged by them, were you? Weiss asked, looking suddenly sympathetic. Maybe they poisoned you into defending them. I wasn't, Gwen snapped, baffled by the accusation. You're already this confused and you still deny it? Weiss insisted. No, I'll cure you. I'll make sure those two scoundrels are thrown into jail for turning you into this. She turned to the shop clerk. Siri, call 911. Okay, we're ruined, Raven muttered to Lin Yi. My bad, Lin Yi said helplessly. He'd painted himself into a corner with a ridiculous lie. Now there was only one way to handle it. He froze time, moved in a blink to the clerk holding the phone, snatched it, and crushed it in his hand with a crack. He summoned his black sword and let a thin thread of demonic power out, not enough to harm anyone, only enough to press on the deepest fears in people's hearts. Silence fell like a blanket. Every person in the shop stiffened, touches of primal terror flashing across their faces. Breath became shallow, limbs trembled. Lin Yi's black aura made the room feel smaller, colder, exactly the impression a demon slayer would give. Now do you believe me? Lin Yi asked calmly, holding the sword as the faint dread faded into stunned quiet. That ruby really was dropped by a demon I cut down. We are not tomb raiders. Please don't call the police. The contrast of his gentle smile and the sinister little display left Weiss staring at him, as if seeing the version of him the dead demons had seen. She went pale, and then everything went black. Weiss fainted, and most of the other customers did too. Only Raven and Gwen remained upright. Lin Yi blinked. He hadn't expected that such a tiny pulse of demonic power would make everyone pass out. Raven floated over and looked at him as if he'd lost his mind. Great, now our trouble's even bigger. Gwen, standing nearby, gave him a wry look. Honestly, Weiss was right. You've wasted that handsome face on idiocy. Lin Yi laughed at himself, exasperated. Mamba out! Weiss dreamed she was a beautiful young woman in an endless rose garden. She sat up slowly among piles of thornless, cloud-soft pink roses, blinking in confusion at the heavenly scene around her. She had no idea why she was there. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair. She raised a hand to smooth it, and just as her vision was obscured by her arm, the wind stopped. When Weiss lowered her hand, her hair smoothed, and as if a curtain had been drawn aside, he stood before her in the hush of the breeze, surrounded by countless roses. He wore a faint, romantic smile, tender, loving, wholly impossible. I must be dreaming, she thought. She knew, paradoxically, that she was awake. This was a fated illusion. But if waking life offered only sorrow and longing, why not surrender to a flawless dream? Even if everything she saw was an illusion, her earnest, burning heart was real. What was wrong with embracing the person in front of her? Let reality be cruel. Let this dream be perfect. Blushing, Weiss leaned in to kiss Lin Yi, who held her close, until a voice cut through the moment. Raven, Gwen, she's waking up. Lin Yi tensed, glanced behind him. What? The dream shattered. The rose garden collapsed, and Weiss fell into the void with a strangled sound, then jolted awake on the lounge sofa on the second floor of the crystal dust jewelry shop. What happened? She blinked wildly and took in the room. Gwen and Lin Yi wearing awkward smiles and apologies, Raven calm as ever. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then memory flooded back. The rose garden, the kiss, and the other memory, the black sword that had knocked everyone out. Demon! Weiss cried, grabbing the vase of roses beside the sofa and hurling it at Lin Yi's handsome face. Lin Yi's reflexes were faster than her temper. He caught the vase and set it back on the table without a scratch. Ha! Now, I'm an angel again, then a demon, he muttered. Can I just be a regular person for once? He complained. Gwen shot him a look. You have the nerve to say that. If you hadn't knocked everyone out, we wouldn't be in this mess. You think calling the police would have helped? Raven and I would have been fugitives, Raven pointed out. Gwen frowned. Why did you have to knock them out? Why not just stop them from calling the police? Lin Yi looked sheepish. He hadn't anticipated Black Sword's effect. I didn't mean to. I really didn't expect the sword to be that powerful. It's just a demonic sword. I didn't think. Weiss finally processed the obvious. So demons are real? You already saw me knock you out. Do you need more proof? Lin Yi said. You guys, wait, let me think. Weiss covered her head with her hands, trying to sort through the terrifying new reality. First of all, do you all really have magic and powers? That's right. Lin Yi made the black sword appear and vanish with a few casual flicks of his hand, producing and sheathing it like a party trick. Okay, I believe you, Weiss interrupted, flustered. Stop showing off. Lin Yi grinned and produced the gems he'd taken from the demonic swordsman, the 101-carat pigeon blood ruby and 2 even larger sapphires. The sapphires were flawless, perfect, symmetrical. One bloomed with internal inclusions like a flower, the other swirled with a galaxy of light. Weiss nearly fainted again. If those 3 gems were put on the market, their starting prices alone would be astronomical. Any high-end house, Cartier, De Beers, Chaumet, would have to take notice. The sheer craftsmanship and quality would draw every gem enthusiast in the world. Mesmerized, Weiss reached a trembling hand toward the stones. Lin Yi, seeing this, snapped them away and hid them. Cough, sorry. Gems from another dimension? Weiss gaped. Beyond dimensions, Lin Yi said, amusement and pride in his voice. Gems so exquisite demons fight over them. I even thought of a new slogan. Weiss was already daydreaming about marketing ideas. Perfect, that settles it. Lin Yi laughed. This was practically a done deal. Weiss leaned in conspiratorially. Where do these demons come from? If they drop gems like that, I want to be a demon hunter. Raven's expression stayed flat. I advise against that. Demons aren't tame beasts. They can eat humans for a snack. Weiss crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow, trying to look confident. We're capable. Why not us? Gwen shuddered at the memory of the demonic swordsman. I thought I was going to die. Weiss took her fear seriously. If someone like Gwen was terrified, the enemy had to be terrifying. Honestly, if it weren't for this pervert next to me, we'd be dead. Gwen gave Lin Yi a thumbs up. Lin Yi took the cue and ran a hand through his hair, basking in the attention. Everyone groaned. Raven added more details. Demons like that are rare. Low-level ones don't carry anything valuable. To take down a demon that drops gems of this caliber, you'd need to be prepared to evacuate a whole city. We'd have to use a nuclear device, Weiss blurted. Pretty much, Raven said calmly. Weiss recoiled. And you killed one of those? Technically, he did. Gwen pointed at Lin Yi. Hey, it was nothing. Really? Lin Yi protested, flustered but trying to play it off. It was a piece of cake. No pressure, barely a warm-up. I was even on an empty stomach. Everyone fell silent, half irritated, half amused, because despite his self-deprecation, Lin Yi's bragging only made him sound more like the same show-off they knew. There were so many cuts. So many cuts. All right? Weiss was genuinely amused. So, I follow now. You want to sell off everything you've collected, right? Exactly. I just arrived in this world and I'm flat broke. No money, I can't even eat or sleep. Lin Yi's words made Weiss even more surprised. Huh? You're from another dimension too? Haha, didn't expect that, did you? Otherwise, why would you think I'm so brilliant and irresistible? A lot of people had the urge to retort Lin Yi, but he really did have the nerve, and the receipts too. His outrageous claims were oddly backed up by facts, so nobody could really argue with him. But don't treat me like an alien, Lin Yi added with a shrug. My world isn't that different from yours. It just doesn't have superheroes, villains, or angels and demons. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Oh, really? So it's a parallel world, and there's another me there? Not exactly. Lin Yi's blunt answer cut off Weiss's excitement. I can't say that. I can only say, in my world I haven't met you. Realizing he'd been too absolute, he quickly softened it. Ah, such a similarly tragic fate. All right, dinner first, then we'll talk terms for the gems. You had to admire her. As the heir to a major company, Weiss's emotional control and PR instincts were lightning fast. First, she turned on her money power and deployed a practiced explanation to make everyone in the restaurant conveniently forget the earlier misunderstanding. Some indescribable external force had briefly knocked everyone into a daze. Because it had happened in her establishment, as a globally respected jewelry brand that prioritized customers and staff, Weiss promised to compensate everyone affected and to investigate the cause thoroughly. She would provide a reasonable explanation, she insisted. Backstage, Lin Yi was sweating. This woman could lie with the purest righteousness. Between the generous compensation, the concern, and promised investigations, and with Lin Yi and the others conveniently vanished when the customers came to, people were more inclined than ever to believe Weiss. Some wondered if they'd seen a ghost or been attacked by some unknown aggressor. Weiss's top-tier PR had done its work. Lin Yi, listening from the wings, was impressed and a little terrified. When she finished tidying things up and returned, Gwen asked her quietly, "Are you really going to tell them the truth about his mischief?" "Ha, of course not. Even if I told them, no one would believe it. If I said what really happened, they'd think we're crazy. My dear, people want to believe what feels right, not necessarily what's true. Truth often looks false because it doesn't match what people expect. At first, I thought you were nuts telling everyone these gems were dropped by demons," Weiss said with a smile, "and I stubbornly believed it." Her example sounded strangely wise. Lin Yi listened and thought, well, another girl with a story. Entertaining. "Let them have the lie they need," Weiss concluded. "Now, where would you like to dine?" "I recommend Per Se, 3 Michelin stars, founded in 2004 by chef Thomas Keller. The ambiance is elegant, and you can overlook Central Park. And their signature, oysters and pearls." Weiss rattled off the details as if Lin Yi and his crew were versed in haute cuisine. In reality, she was talking to a commoner girl, a demon's daughter, and a top-tier shut-in, hardly a crowd steeped in Michelin lore. Lin Yi only associated Michelin with tires. Still, she wanted to show class. Whether Gwen and Raven noticed or not, Lin Yi did. And it was the first time the group had heard of a truly luxurious restaurant. Lin Yi liked to boast, but he usually flaunted his poor side, like a guy scrounging for food. Weiss, by contrast, was showing off wealth and taste. The difference was stark. Lin Yi pictured himself as the perfect man, but in these surroundings he was laughably provincial. "Isn't that dish tiny? Who's it enough for?" "Where's my rice? There's no rice. This cola tastes weird. Oh, it's wine. Lafitte?" In his head, he was the ultimate bumpkin. Weiss fought to keep a straight face. Clearing her throat, she moved to business. "About your 3 gems, I don't have the cash to buy all 3 outright right now." "No problem. $10 million and they're all yours," Lin Yi said. Fork paused as he inspected whatever oysters and pearls was. Weiss nearly choked on her water and burst into laughter. She was grateful Gwen had brought such a naive buyer to her. "Cough. If you accept that, you'll be at an enormous loss. You worked hard to get these." "What hard work? It took a few quick moves. The 2 toughest ones took less than 5 minutes. 10 million is more than enough." Everyone at the table was left speechless. Lin Yi either didn't care or was the biggest gull imaginable. Weiss's gratitude to Gwen for introducing him only grew. "All right," Weiss said, composing herself. "I'll give you a card with 30 million US dollars loaded on it, plus lifetime VIP privileges from the Schnee family. And use of a luxury apartment on West 57th Street in Manhattan, valued at $49 million. If you're satisfied, we'll arrange to transfer it to your name later." Lin Yi, still forking his food, froze. 30 million plus 49 million. He tried to convert it to RMB in his head and panicked. That's well over $500 million yuan. Were these gems really worth that much? He still didn't grasp the scale. In fact, just one of the 2 sapphires alone could be worth far more than $300 million, over 2 billion yuan. Lin Yi had nearly agreed to sell all 3 for 10 million. If he'd taken them to the wrong place, the fallout would have been disastrous. "Are my gems really worth that much?" he asked, incredulous. Weiss smiled, laced her fingers and propped her chin on them. "Do you know what the largest pigeon blood ruby ever sold for was?" "How much?" $34.8 million. Lin Yi's voice trembled. 34.8 million? Yes. And that stone was only 55.22 carats, nearly half the size of yours. In quality and craftsmanship, yours surpasses that. Ruby prices don't increase linearly with weight, Weiss continued. They increase exponentially. If your ruby went to auction, the starting bid couldn't be less than $70 million. It could easily fetch $100 million or even more. Lin Yi finally understood, in a way that left him breathless. The treasures he'd been dropping while hunting monsters were astronomical in value. The smallest gem was already worth a fortune, and the other two might be worth sums beyond his imagination. Weiss and Raven were stunned. So much money? Neither they nor Lin Yi had any real sense of what that kind of wealth meant. So, do you realize how charmingly naive you sounded just now? Weiss chuckled, tilting her head. $10 million, plus 3 incredibly rare gems that are almost impossible to find anywhere in the world. Lin Yi went quiet. By the way, Weiss continued, will you be able to produce more of those gems in the future? Weiss was already thinking ahead. The gems Lin Yi had produced were world-class rarities. If he could find more, a close partnership, one that gave her family priority or even exclusivity in buying any future spoils, would bring them unimaginable benefits. Will those demons keep coming after you? Lin Yi asked Raven. Not in the short term, but there will be more in the future, Raven replied. I see. I probably won't be able to get any gems from you right away, but there'll be opportunities to cooperate later, Weiss said. That's fine. We have the patience to wait. As long as the possibility of ongoing cooperation and profit existed, she wasn't going to let it slip. To this new friendship, Weiss proposed, raising her wineglass with an elegance that made Lin Yi stare. She really was something, young but able to control the situation and squeeze every advantage from it. Someone with that kind of clout could round up tens of millions or buy an expensive property in an instant. Status, capability, beauty, poise, she had it all. Lin Yi couldn't help imagining that when she grew older, she might keep a stable of handsome boys around just for fun. Weiss was the sort of person who could. He knew a lot about her, but not everything. For one thing, it was obvious at a glance that her relationship with him wasn't deep or stable. It looked new, the kind of thing where someone confesses after only a few days because they're afraid the other person will be gone tomorrow. Lin Yi suspected it must have been Weiss, reserved in public but driven in private, who confessed. That thought delighted him. If that was true, he might actually have a shot. A pretty big one, he told himself with a private grin. Weiss gave a cunning smile. Lin Yi hadn't expected her to be so forward. He'd assumed a girl like her wouldn't set her sights on a man like him. After all, in her position she could choose any type, aloof, puppyish, passionate, youthful, mature. Money opens choices. Why pick him, a guy who only had a decent face and an odd personality? He'd never tried to confess to Gwen. She was a normal girl who'd seen the world, and Lin Yi felt a nobody like him stood little chance. Raven, on the other hand, a demoness, new to this world and inexperienced in love, seemed easy to win over. Not materialistic, not picky, a few harmless quirks and she'd be his. Finally, he'd found someone who seemed perfect for him. If he didn't seize the chance now, he might never get another. He didn't realize how much of his life he'd wasted hiding away, playing broken video games, watching anime and old dramas and movies. Damn, he muttered to himself sometimes, being an orphan is like this. Without someone to push me out of the house, I'd just stay inside forever. No parents, no friends. What a waste of a handsome face, and his wardrobe and demeanor showed the signs of a life with problems. The dinner wound down, the money was exchanged, and it was getting late. Bye-bye. Today was wonderful, meeting such interesting people, Weiss said. I'm really reluctant to part, someone else said. Lin Yi smiled and waved at Gwen and Weiss. Oh, really? Then how about continuing this at my place? We could keep the evening going. Weiss's opportunistic instincts flared right away. Lin Yi meant it as politeness. He didn't expect her to take him up on it. I think I'll pass. I'm exhausted and just want to rest, Weiss said. Raven came to his rescue with an excuse. Aha, you're right. I'd really like to go, but if Raven's that tired, we'll skip it. Lin Yi smiled and bowed out politely. Weiss frowned, privately cursing. I need to go back quickly. Otherwise, my dad will nag me about where I've been, she said, and Gwen apologized and declined as well. All right then, let's call it a night. Gwen, Raven, Jack. We'll see each other tomorrow, Weiss called after them, waving. Lin Yi thought, see you tomorrow sounded tentative. He had a feeling it might be a while before they met again. He didn't know then that if Weiss really wanted to find him, he couldn't escape her. As Lin Yi and Raven walked away, he let out a long sigh. You look tired, he said. Of course I'm tired, Raven admitted. I didn't realize that getting along with people could be so draining. Same here, Lin Yi said, stretching and enjoying the cool evening air. Introverts suffered in groups, and Raven felt it acutely. Still, she surprised herself by opening up. With your looks, I'd have thought you were popular since childhood, she continued. Do I look like it? Lin Yi asked. Humph, he smiled wryly. The truth is the opposite. In my world, I'd count myself lucky if people didn't wish me dead. Raven laughed. How could that be? Sometimes what people see isn't the whole truth, Lin Yi said, folding his arms and resting his head back against the night. The truth is, I have nothing except being handsome. Raven burst out laughing. You don't expect me to believe that, do you? All right. I believe you, Mr. Handsome, she teased. He shrugged. You'll see someday. Maybe, Raven said more softly. For now, she was content to go along with him. If they spent enough time together, everything that needed to be known would reveal itself. 28. The value of the devil's daughter. Hey, why did you pick me instead of Gwen? Lin Yi blinked. Shouldn't a question like that wait until they'd been together a few months, if not years? Why jump to this level of intensity so soon? Still, hundreds of gotcha romances had trained him for moments like this. He let out a soft laugh and answered with all the cheesiness he could muster. Because I knew I was meant to be yours. The Raven rolled her eyes in mock disgust. How cheesy. What if I break up with you later? She asked. Then I must have changed. I would no longer be the one who was meant to be yours. His voice was low and gentle. The Raven didn't reply, but she smiled. Lin Yi took that as a pass, the cumulative effect of 1,000 mediocre pickup lines and a few perfect ones. All right, will you always love me? Can you give me a reason not to? He countered. I'm not as amazing as you think. And I'm not as terrible as you imagine. Lin Yi reached for the Raven's hand. But one day I will leave you. Why? He looked at her. Because I'm a demon and you're human. Is that so? Then I'll just become a demon too. Her answer came like a challenge. Lin Yi's eyes widened. She laughed softly. You're making me love you even more. If this were just some childish fling, we could always walk away before trouble arrived. But now, I don't know if I could ever let this feeling go. Why would you let go? What if more trouble comes? If it can be fixed, we'll fix it together. If it can't, then I'll sink with you. He didn't hesitate. Whether it's pain or torment, I'm willing. My life before meeting you was at rock bottom. At one point, it felt irreparably broken. No matter what disasters we face from now on, I won't let go. His voice remained soft, but the resolve in it was unmistakable. I've already seen hell. What's another trip? The Raven listened, cheeks pink, eyes glossy. Well, if you insist on being willing to face hell for me, then congratulations. You've gotten yourself into big trouble. Maybe the biggest trouble in the world. She smiled despite herself. If being with you is the worst trouble in the world, then I hope that trouble spreads across the whole world. You know what? I don't know why. You're clumsy in other ways, but when it comes to making a girl happy, you're incredibly clever. Lin Yi smiled. Maybe I'm still clumsy. It's just this silly, awkward side of me looks cleverest to someone who loves me. Her heart thudded at that. The Raven's composure wavered. She almost lost control of her smile. No, you really are. Clever. Well, since you say so, then I am clever, Jack, she teased, and he raised a hand in mock triumph. How much longer are we going to walk like this? Lin Yi asked after a moment. I want to find somewhere nice to rest. You're right, but hotels need IDs. We could go to the luxurious apartment Weiss sent us. I think it's on West 57th Street. Let's take a taxi. It'll be fast. Lin Yi was about to flag one down when the Raven tugged him back. Lin Yi stopped. I don't want to wait any longer. West 57th Street, right? Yes, 111 West 57th Street. Good. She closed her eyes, centered herself, and extended her magic perception to lock onto the location. When she confirmed no one was watching, she opened a small portal and pulled Lin Yi through. The next instant, they were inside the ultra-luxurious building at 111 West 57th Street in New York City. Lin Yi stared. "You could do that?" "Yes, but I don't like to use it much. It draws attention." "So why now?" The Raven's face flushed. "I just wanted to rest sooner." He grinned inwardly at her impatience. Girls could be impatient too, he thought. They stepped into the lobby and checked in, and Lin Yi finally understood the lifestyle of the rich. The place was absurdly lavish, opulent beyond what most people would ever see. For a moment, he wondered how he'd ended up choosing quiet, secluded properties when he could have lived like this. "Wow, this is really nice," the Raven breathed, exploring the room in wonder before her gaze returned to Lin Yi. She bit her lip in a way that made her seem restless. This kind of life is true enjoyment. Lin Yi basked in that, but his revelry was cut short. "Where's the bathroom?" "Oh, I can't even find the bathroom in all this space. We'll have to get used to living in a big place." As he smiled at her, the Raven suddenly shed her usual adornments. Lin Yi blinked. She was blushing and used an arm to cover herself. "Ha! There's a big problem, sweetheart." She was teasing him mercilessly. They were both impatient, perhaps too impatient. Lin Yi felt a flush of heat. He'd expected a long, slow build, not this fast-track intimacy, but he didn't protest. Morning came. The Raven woke in Lin Yi's warm embrace. Her hair was tousled, but she looked refreshed. The essence she had taken the previous night must have been strong. As reality reasserted itself, embarrassment washed over her. She desperately tried to stamp down the replaying scenes in her head. A quick murmur of a magical mantra helped calm her. Oh, RWBY, you're awake?" Lin Yi yawned, squinting at the bright light through the curtains. The sight of her made the Raven's carefully suppressed feelings surge anew. She sighed, feeling foolish for making such a fuss over nothing and everything. Unable to contain herself, she pushed him back down onto the bed. "Hey!" he protested, half laughed, half serious. They'd moved at a speed that would make friends like Gwen and Weiss swoon or cry. It had been as if a single night had condensed everything that might usually take months. They'd crossed boundaries and shared intimacies that some would reserve for much later. Gwen was probably still regretting. Weiss was probably still scheming. Meanwhile, the Raven had already satisfied her hunger. Weiss had been right about a lot of things. The Raven's cool, gloomy exterior hid a fierce appetite. That ferocity was part of her nature. The true worth of a demoness, it seemed, lay not in restraint, but in the intensity of her desires. 29. Girl's Story. Let's go back to last night. Besides Lin Yi and his sweet moments, Weiss and Gwen also couldn't sleep. Gwen was the first to break down. After saying goodbye to everyone, she'd walked a good distance before she slipped on her spider suit and swung home. Cutting across the glittering New York skyline, she let her body move and her thoughts drift. So what's wrong with me? She wondered. It had all been such a short thing, a little episode that lasted less than a day. Why was she still obsessing over it? The Raven's voice echoed in her head. "So you like him, right?" Her nerves tightened. She dropped down onto a rooftop to rest. "I'm only offering advice," the Raven had said. "What you do is up to you. He's your friend, not mine. I know him from comics, but you've been Peter's friend for years. Before you ask me, ask yourself." Gwen remembered the rooftop earlier that morning, Lin Yi smiling at her. He seemed to know everything about her past, her present, maybe even her future. "He knows everything," she told herself. "Then why doesn't he know I like him?" She scolded herself with a half laugh. Who falls head over heels for someone they only met once? Oh, right, me. Her thoughts ran away from her. He's handsome, probably the most attractive boy I've ever met in real life. But am I really that shallow? Do I like him just because he's good looking? Get a grip, Gwen. You're a hero. You're Spider-Woman. Don't be so ridiculous. She tried to rally herself, puffing out her chest mentally, insisting she wasn't some lovesick teenager. If I run away now, who'll protect the students and citizens behind me? I can die in battle, hacked to pieces or blown to ashes, but I cannot let them die for me. If I lose, you must continue to protect them for me. Yet the memory of Lin Yi's embarrassed, flushed face under the mask kept tugging her down. The harder she leaned into responsibility and heroics, the deeper her feelings sank. Why is it possible for someone to be both handsome and kind? Logically, handsome boys should be troublemakers, showy until real danger comes, and then they bolt. If he were like that, she thought, she might feel better. Then she wouldn't be so conflicted. Maybe I can wait for him and the Raven to break up, she told herself. Relationships that start fast often don't last, 2 or 3 months at most. So if I wait, when he's sad, I can comfort him. But then she slapped a hand to her forehead with a laugh. Oh, Gwen, you're being ridiculous. You'll never get that chance. Give up. Still, swinging home, hope and doubt fought each other. What if there is a chance? Wouldn't it be awful to miss it? By the time she reached her apartment, she was exhausted by the mental self-torment. She opened the door with her key and nearly ran into her father, a large, solid figure filling the hallway. 8:59, he said, an old habit of timing her curfew. Lucky you, I won't give you trouble this time. Gwen's frustration and embarrassment intensified. She tried to slip past him. I went out to dinner with my friend Weiss. Her father didn't let it go. Weiss, your rich friend? How much did you spend? Gwen rolled her eyes inwardly. Dad, she paid. Weiss treated us. That's the worst scenario, he said, lecturing as only a protective parent can. Nothing's really free. Don't let rich kids treat you like that. Don't let them buy you. When someone gives you expensive things, you become dependent without even realizing it. How many of you went? 8. He fished cash from his pocket, counted it out, and thrust bills into her hand. Here, 1,250. Pay back your share tomorrow. I won't have my daughter running after wealthy kids emptying your head with luxurious nonsense. Gwen took the money with a tight-lipped sigh. We're not charity, Dad. We can take care of ourselves. All right, go to your room and rest, he said at last. She closed her door, leaned against it, and let a jumble of feelings wash over her. Irritation, shame, numbness. She shoved her earphones in, cranked the music, and collapsed on the bed. The lyrics spun around her, demons and angels, cries for help, the urge to let everything go. She felt very small. Even someone who could stop a light rail was still just a young person with a fragile life. She finally reached for her phone, thumbed into her photo album, and hunted through dozens of pictures until she found one of Lin Yi, smiling beside her. She set it as her wallpaper, closed her eyes, and let the music carry her into a restless sleep. That was Gwen's night. Weiss's was different, but no less restless. Weiss stormed off in a fury after the group split. It wasn't fair. Lin Yi had just arrived in this world today. Why hadn't she been the first to meet him? If she had, she wouldn't be left feeling miserable and slighted. Raven? Lucky Raven. What luck did she have to meet such a good boy? She replayed his features in her mind. Cute, strong, a pleasant voice. An angel. It should have been her angel. Weiss straightened and puffed up with confidence. That gloomy crow couldn't possibly handle a boy like Lin Yi. The best boy should be paired with the best girl, and clearly she was his ideal match. Time would reveal the truth. She already knew it. Confident, she laughed to herself, then climbed into the waiting car. Please play Justin Bieber, she told the driver. Baby. As the song played, Weiss cradled a small luxury box on her lap. Inside were 3 exquisite gems, each flashing its own unique light in the car's ambient glow. For Weiss, they were proof. Lin Yi had given these to her. She imagined she'd empty her accounts to buy such things, so if she hadn't actually paid, they must have been his gift. She hugged the box to her chest like a treasure and continued singing along to the radio as the driver, professional and unspeaking, drove her home. Arriving at the mansion, Weiss could hardly wait to tell her mother about the day. Instead, she ran into her older sister, Winter, aloof in appearance, but in reality very fond of her little sister. Winter, I'm back, Weiss said, beaming. Winter softened and pulled Weiss into a hug. Then she noticed the box in Weiss's hands. What's that? Weiss gleefully opened it and showed Winter the 3 glowing gems. Winter was stunned. Dazzling. Huge. Where had Weiss gotten them? Weiss puffed up with pride. Guess! So these gems, which are practically impossible to find anywhere in the world, were given to you by a boy? Winter had one hand on her hip and the other waving in the air, her expression saying loud and clear, Are you pulling my leg, little sister? Oh yeah, I mean 79 million for these 3 gems. Wouldn't you call that basically a gift? Weiss smiled, trying to look innocently adorable. Humph. Enough jokes, Weiss. Where did these gems really come from? Winter's skepticism had the edge of an older sister who wasn't having any of it. It's true, Weiss shrugged. Stories should make sense, but real life doesn't have to. Existence has its own logic. She mimicked Winter's stance, hands on her hips, launching into a mock philosophical lecture. Winter just shook her head. All right, maybe I stretched it a little, but if I told you the whole truth, you'd be even more shocked. Winter blinked, clearly not convinced. Weiss sighed as the playful act lost momentum. Come on, give me the other versions. Entertain me. Winter folded her arms and listened. The two of them retreated to the sitting room, settled down with their tea, and Weiss began to lay it out. Demons, magic, and a boy who looks like an angel. Winter snorted. If this had happened years ago, even pictures wouldn't have convinced me. Weiss passed her photos across. Winter studied them, put down her phone, crossed her legs, and took a measured sip of tea. You actually believe it now? Weiss nodded. Yes, and when I heard Mother is flying to Britain to have exclusive gems made for the vampires, I figured nothing in this world should surprise me anymore. What? Mother's going to Britain to custom-make gems for vampires. Yes, vampires. Vampires? As in the ones from movies? Winter's face registered a mix of disbelief and fascination. I know how it sounds, but they really exist. Weiss was matter of fact. They're not exactly like the villains in films. The faction we met, well, they're not as malevolent as people think. In some cases, they're even kind. Winter blew on her tea and took another sip. So there are actually a lot of vampires alive in this world? We were surprised too. Vampires usually look human, and most are active only at night, so people don't notice them. Weiss leaned in. There are actually no fewer than 10,000 in New York City alone. Winter nearly choked on her tea. 10,000? How is that even possible? I could run into one on the street? Technically, maybe, but they're not dumb. They won't reveal themselves in broad daylight. Weiss's eyes widened at the implications. If vampires are real, then what about other creatures? Demons, lizardmen. Are those online conspiracy theories true? Is Obama? Winter held up a hand. Whoa. I'm not going to confirm any presidential lizard theories. I can say this, though. As someone with insider knowledge in government channels, I can tell you that rumors spread for reasons. Not all of them are nonsense. Weiss squealed. Then the Illuminati. 9/11. Michael Jackson faked his death. The moon landing. The moon landing was real, Winter cut in with a smile. If aliens have been around since ancient times and the U.S. still couldn't get to the moon, that would be ridiculous. Weiss slumped into the sofa, stunned and a little exhilarated. So a heavenly boy killed a demon and handed me precious gems, and now you tell me vampires and aliens might exist? My world is being rebooted. Remember, we aren't ordinary, Winter said suddenly. Weiss straightened. You mean the inscriptions? Exactly. Winter's voice was calmer now. Our clan has always treated inscriptions as another way of understanding the world, almost a science. But as we decipher more of the old texts, it's becoming clear that our inscriptions are closer to magic than pure science. Weiss narrowed her eyes, skeptical in a new way. All right, surprise me. Winter's expression softened. We've been digging through the family's ancient texts and realized something bigger. The true history of our clan is scattered across ruins all over the world. Weiss blinked. What do you mean? Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Hittites, the Phoenicians, ancient India, China. Every major civilization seems to be recorded in our family's inscriptions. Our inscriptions developed as our ancestors absorbed knowledge from nearly all these cultures. It's another way of seeing the world, another interpretation handed down through generations. Weiss listened, stunned into silence. Winter continued, and as she did, a small diamond appeared in her palm without anyone touching it. She made it hover, and to Weiss's mild surprise, because she'd been expecting this kind of thing for a while now, water condensed in the air around the gem and formed a delicate sphere. Winter let the water settle back into the cup. Our family's texts are probably just the tip of the iceberg, Winter said. I want to trace the truth and the history of the inscriptions. Weiss gave a dry laugh. As expected, I should have known you were going to bet this on me. You always pass the hard jobs to me, Weiss protested. Whether it's family duty or proving your value, it's all the same to you, Winter said. Weiss forced a smile, the way she always did, like Gwen, but with no real light behind it. If I refuse, You won't refuse. Winter's voice was firm. And you won't be doing this alone. Weiss rolled her eyes. Don't make me an unpaid globe-trotting archaeologist. I'm not Jackie Chan hunting 12 talismans. If I end up fighting the Dark Hand on my own, don't expect me to survive. We won't risk you on that, Winter said. You'll only need to set aside weekends to travel. We'll handle school. Don't worry about classes. Weiss's expression shifted, curiosity mingling with scheming. If it's just travel, I could bring a few people along, right? Winter's lips twitched. Exactly. This is important. I'll find capable helpers. Weiss's smile finally reached her eyes, a small, confident curve. Chapter 31. Sexual Repression. They say women in their 30s are like wolves and in their 40s like tigers, but Lin Yi wasn't so sure. Whatever the proverb meant, Raven's state had gone far past mere sexual repression. If he hadn't read the comics and known the lore, he might have sworn he'd hooked up with a succubus, the top-tier kind. Lin Yi had always thought of himself as extremely repressed. He spent his days at home watching adult films and playing RWBY. After meeting Raven, though, he had to admit, oh no, was my self-control actually that strong? Compared to Raven now, Lin Yi looked like an unapproachable tsundere ice prince. They had gone at it from night until morning without a break, and just when he thought he could finally sleep, dawn arrived. Raven was already awake. Then, as if a switch had flipped, their frantic coupling stopped, and they simply leaned against each other, content to wait for breakfast. Raven was curled up behind him on the sofa, hugging him tight, her small face tucked against his shoulder. Lin Yi's hair was mussed, but otherwise he looked oddly calm. There was no exhaustion on his face. Raven being half-demon explained her stamina, but for a mortal like Lin Yi to keep up, he had to be something else. Hey, Lin Yi said softly, if your emotions get too stirred up, couldn't that cause your powers to go out of control? That's part of it, Raven answered. But thanks to you, my father went mad and tried to drag me back. He used too much power and overreached. So he can't affect you right now? Lin Yi asked, catching on. Raven nodded. He poured a lot of power into sending that powerful demon into this world. He thought that way I couldn't escape. At first I thought so too, but I didn't expect you to be so abnormal. Abnormal? Lin Yi blinked. Raven smiled and pinched his cheek. Now he doesn't have enough power to cross dimensions or touch my mind. Wow, Lin Yi said, grinning. Raven's cheeks flushed at the tease, and she retaliated by kneading his face with both hands. Stop it! Stop it! Okay, I get it. It hurts, he laughed. Raven sighed, a little melancholy. But it's only temporary. My father will recover soon, and then I'll have to be careful not to let my emotions spiral again. You mean you won't be able to, like last night? Her eyes went wide and slightly hurt. I won't be able to do that with you non-stop. Lin Yi almost choked. Was that what she was sad about? Being the child of a demon wasn't easy, especially when Raven herself was kind and normal-hearted, but burdened by her father's power. The more someone repressed themselves, the worse it could be when they finally snapped. He understood that now. It's embarrassing to say, but I really wish I could be with you like that all day. Raven confessed. And for days, weeks, months? Lin Yi widened his eyes in mock horror. Months? No way. Do you think I have infinite energy? I'd be a mummy by then. Raven looked blissful and a little out of breath. If I could always be with the person I love, I'd be the happiest being in the world. Or the most shriveled corpse, Lin Yi muttered, though he was smiling. Is there no way to stop your father for good? He asked more seriously. Raven gave a short, bitter laugh. I could kill him. Lin Yi was speechless. Filial piety aside, she actually said it calmly. Or, she continued, thinking, if I could become stronger, if I could balance my ego and superego, if I could fully control and use all my power, then he couldn't control me. That sounds difficult, Lin Yi admitted. It is, Raven agreed. Even the masters find it hard, which is why I want to savor every minute of this, every second. Once my father recovers, I'll go back to a constrained life. Whatever happens, I'll be by your side, Lin Yi promised. Raven smiled, warmth in her eyes, and clung to him even tighter like a kitten. Even if we have to be careful, we can still be close every day, right? As long as we don't go overboard, Lin Yi said. I'll be careful. She said it earnestly, and he felt a little thrill at the thought. If the rule about 30s and 40s applied to Raven and she was already like this now, He shivered and made a private, ridiculous mental note to find some sort of infinite energy buff for his human body. Before he could plot out how to augment his stamina, the doorbell rang. "Oh, that must be our breakfast," Lin Yi said, trying to get up. Raven tightened her hold. "No, don't go. I don't want to let you go. You'll be fine. RWBY, I'll just go get it." "No, you come back. Don't leave." Lin Yi laughed helplessly. She was impossibly adorable, clinging to him like that. "Cough. Just leave it outside." He tried to shout through the door, but the soundproofing in a luxury apartment was excellent. If there had been any neighbors last night, they wouldn't have heard a thing. Lin Yi remembered that and called instead, "RWBY, since you don't want me to open the door, use your magic and open it." Raven straightened up with a cheeky grin. "Okay, but you have to beg and give me a kiss as payment." What could he do? He played along. "Please, my adorable RWBY, may I kiss you?" She responded with a delighted trill and used a small spell. The door swung open, and it wasn't the delivery person who stepped in. It was Weiss and Gwen. "What the? You two are really showing off first thing in the morning?" Weiss exploded the moment she saw Lin Yi and Raven curled together on the sofa. Her expression had gone green with envy. She'd expected Raven to be repressed, but not like this, clinging to Lin Yi at breakfast time. There was no law and order left in the world. If she'd known this was only the mildest version of what they could be like, she might have fainted on the spot. Lin Yi said a girl like Weiss could succeed at anything she tried. Let's rewind a bit to when Weiss bounced awake at 6 in the morning. The alarm kept ringing, ding-a-ling, until, smash! A slender, decisive hand flattened the clock and silenced it for good. No need to worry, though. The next second, her own voice replaced it. "Good morning. A new day." Weiss's large, clear eyes flew open, and she sat up with a bright smile. "Ha!" She inhaled the crisp air, listened to the imaginary birds, and then broke into song. Maroon 5's What Lovers Do, full-throated and playful. The little princess twirled and hopped around her grand room, eyes closed, singing as if today were the most important day of her life. She sang well, danced beautifully, and looked every inch the part. If she ever wanted to debut as an idol, she'd be top tier, but she had no interest in that. Right now, her whole world revolved around a particular someone she'd fallen for. Her elation didn't go unnoticed. Winter watched from the doorway, smiling and shaking her head. Her little sister had slid into adolescence overnight. Was that a good thing? Winter was skeptical. The boy Weiss liked was handsome, yes, but did he think a pretty face would be enough to win her over? Absolutely not. As Weiss's older sister, Winter wouldn't let some worthless show-off sully her perfect sibling. She'd scrutinize Lin Yi like a detective, follow his moves, and pass judgment, but all in secret. If Weiss knew, she'd be furious. So Winter resigned herself to watching helplessly as Weiss gushed over someone she barely knew. After the usual morning rituals, tidying her room, washing up, changing, fussing over her makeup and hair, Weiss stood back and admired the elevated version of herself in the mirror. Perfect. Let's go. She climbed into her Rolls-Royce and, thinking ahead, pulled out her phone to message Gwen. Meeting Lin Yi and Raven alone could be awkward. With Gwen along, it would feel more natural. Weiss tapped out a quick text. "I'll come pick you up." In Gwen's room, however, Gwen was still asleep in her pajama shorts, sprawled on the bed with headphones on. The music played through her dreams. The message chime barely registered. She muttered and turned over. Jack, stop." A blush-colored smile crossed her face in sleep. Lin Yi was a constant offender where Gwen's imagination was concerned. So when Weiss arrived at Gwen's door and smoothed her outfit before ringing the bell, the only person answerable at that hour was someone decidedly more awake. A middle-aged man with a weathered face opened the door, rubbing his eyes. "Just a moment, I'll be right there," he grumbled, then looked up properly and brightened a little. "Oh, hello. I'm George Stacy. You must be Weiss, Gwen's friend?" Weiss smiled politely. "Yes, Mr. Stacy. Gwen and I had dinner together last night." George nodded. Right. About that." He hesitated and then asked bluntly, "You didn't bribe her to hang out with you, did you? I mean, you didn't pay her to be your follower or anything?" Weiss blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" George's question made her frown. She answered carefully, voice steady. "No, of course not. Gwen and I are friends. We help each other with school and support one another." There's no monetary motive. Uh-huh, George said, seemingly unconvinced. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and began counting bills. Weiss watched him, baffled. Then he held out an envelope. Here, this is Gwen's share from the dinner last night. Weiss stared. George had taken out $1,250 and was offering it back as if returning a debt. Her smile vanished. Mr. Stacy, are you insulting me? At once, Weiss's expression turned cool and hard, and even George, used to being in control, felt chastened. He stammered. No, I didn't mean, since you and Gwen are such good friends, I thought she should pay her own way instead of you covering everything. Weiss's eyes narrowed, but she kept her voice measured. I understand you see things from a middle-class perspective, and that's how you value friendships. But that isn't mine, nor is it Gwen's. If you think what binds Gwen and me is a single dinner or $1,250, you're mistaken. She placed a hand over her heart and continued, not unkindly, but with absolute certainty. Your money can't buy the bond we share. A check like that can't change who we are to each other, nor can it implant your narrow ideals into our relationship. I respect your right to your beliefs, Mr. Stacy, but they aren't the only truth. George went pale. Weiss finished, crisply. I didn't come here to argue with Gwen's father. I came for Gwen. Silence hung between them. Mr. Stacy, flustered and somehow chastened by her confidence, stepped aside without stopping her from entering. He watched the determined girl walk into his house and take Gwen's waiting hand. Lin Yi had said a girl like Weiss could succeed at anything she tried. Killing someone and breaking their heart? How cruel! Weiss muttered to herself as she watched her friend's sleeping pose. Gwen was gnawing the quilt so intensely it looked almost frightening. Weiss shook her head with a smile. All right, lazy bones. The sun's already up. Get up. Hey, Weiss? Gwen grumbled as Weiss patted over and tapped her cheek. Her brows furrowed, her blurry eyes opened, and the last threads of sleep loosened. Weiss? Gwen rubbed at her eyes and blinked. For a moment, she still half saw Weiss smiling at her in the haze. As she cleared her head, realization hit. Wait, Weiss, what are you doing here? You were talking in your sleep, kept calling Jack's name. Weiss crossed her arms, a mischievous smile on her face. Gwen's face heated instantly. She turned nearly scarlet. Well, it's not a secret that I like Jack. Weiss grinned. I came to invite you to go on a trip with me. A trip? Gwen blinked, still half asleep. Yes, a weekend trip with Jack. How about it? Excited? Why now? Why suddenly a trip? Gwen asked, confused. I'll give you the details later. For now, are you coming or not? Weiss said, rolling her eyes. If you don't come, I'll have to endure sitting next to Raven alone. Gwen's eyes widened. Fine. Where are we going? We're going to Bolivia, Salar do Uyuni, the mirror of the sky. Weiss said, unable to hide her excitement. Is it like the one I saw online? Gwen's face brightened. The place that looks unreal? That's the one. Weiss laughed. Come on, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Gwen shot out of bed, hands in the air. Hold on, get dressed first. Oh, right. He. Weiss teased, poking her nose, and Gwen and Weiss hurried to get ready. Once they were set, they slipped downstairs. Dad, I'm going on a trip with Weiss. I'll be back in 2 days, Gwen called as she passed the living room where her father, George, was watching the news. Where are you going? George asked, standing up in alarm. We're going to Salar do Uyuni, Gwen called as she shut the front door before he could say more. George stared at the closed door, speechless. You're not going to tell your father properly? He muttered to himself. If I told him we were going to Bolivia, he'd stop us for sure, Weiss said, giving Gwen a look as they hurried away. Better to just go. True, Gwen admitted. We'll be back Saturday night. Don't worry, I won't miss a single class. Weiss rolled her eyes. You're a model student. That's why you're never late, even though you're Spider-Man. Gwen blushed at the reminder and shrugged. A superhero and a straight-A student. I don't know how you do it. They both laughed, but the mood shifted when the topic turned back to Jack and Raven. So, are we going to find Jack and Raven now? Gwen asked. She scratched the back of her head, guilty. Isn't it kind of wrong to hope Jack and Raven break up? I mean, wanting someone else's boyfriend. We didn't break them up, Weiss said quickly, defensive. It's not wrong to like someone and hope you end up with them. That's human. Gwen's conscience wasn't entirely convinced. And what if they don't break up? The question hung in the air. Weiss forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm already suffering enough. Don't plant despair in me, please. They both knew the sharpness of that pain, even if they pretended to be fine. Better, they told themselves, to escape for a while and stop thinking. A short trip could dull the ache, even if it couldn't fix anything. Someday they might accept it. Until then, a weekend in a dreamlike salt flat sounded like a good plan. By the way, what should we have for breakfast? Weiss asked suddenly, trying to lighten the mood. You read my mind. Whatever you want, I'm in, Gwen replied, deciding to enjoy the moment. Later that morning, they arrived at the luxury apartment where Lin Yi and Raven lived. Both girls were a mess of nervous anticipation and envy. Weiss rang the doorbell. Strange. They should be home, Weiss frowned. Maybe they're still asleep? Ring again? Gwen nodded, and Weiss pressed the bell a second time. The door swung open, and they stepped inside. What they saw made their stomachs drop. Lin Yi and Raven were wrapped around each other on the couch, looking very much like a couple who had nowhere else to be. Raven glanced up and then, with a teasing smile directed squarely at Weiss and Gwen, reached over and stroked Lin Yi's cheek in that intimate, possessive way. Gwen and Weiss froze, faces contorted with jealous fury. You two are seriously showing off your affection first thing in the morning? Weiss blurted. Both girls wanted nothing more than to tear into the scene, murder, then break his heart. How cruel. They stood there, two defeated dogs in the shadow of someone else's happiness, blood boiling and hearts aching all at once. Emo girl. Gwen? Weiss? Why are you here? Lin Yi was genuinely surprised. He'd assumed "see you tomorrow" was just a polite way to end the conversation, not an actual plan to see each other the next day. Anyway, Weiss said, flustered. Could you two separate first? Gwen pleaded. It's awkward to watch. Weiss hurried over to where Lin Yi and Raven were standing and yanked Raven away from him. Raven had been clinging to Lin Yi like a limpet. Hey, this is our home. We can do whatever we want here. What's awkward about it? Raven grumbled and tried to press herself against Lin Yi again. There are guests here. Don't you know basic etiquette, respecting guests? Weiss's smile froze, and she pushed Raven firmly onto the sofa. Besides, this fancy apartment is mine. You only have the right to live here. Ownership is still under my name. We already gave you all 3 gems. You're so sneaky, Raven shot back. They shoved at each other, escalating into a full-on confrontation. Weiss scoffed. Haha, welcome to how rich people work. You've still got a lot to learn. Now move properly, the other insisted. In a contest of raw strength, Raven couldn't win against Weiss, who had sword training. Raven was reluctantly shoved onto the couch. Ugh, so annoying, she muttered, face full of resentment. Why couldn't she and Lin Yi just spend the whole day together in peace? All right, don't sulk. We came to bring you good news, Weiss said, trying to sound conciliatory. Weiss planted her hands on her hips. Honestly, the best news for me would be if you two disappeared right now. Raven wasn't tactful. She said whatever she felt. Weiss's eyelids twitched. Okay. What is this good news? Lin Yi, watching the back and forth, smiled helplessly and stepped in to cut their bickering short. Oh, it's an invitation. How about a fun weekend trip with me? The destination is Salar de Uyuni, the mirror of the sky, he announced. How about it? Aren't you excited? Weiss clasped her hands together and swayed, grin wide. Wow, Salar de Uyuni? I've never been there. Lin Yi, who spent a lot of time online, knew what a dreamy place it was. Right, the place is unbelievably beautiful. It's the rainy season now. If we go, we'll see the most spectacular mirror effect. Weiss already pictured herself on that glassy lake, breeze in her hair, walking slowly toward the eternal angel, Lin Yi, standing between 2 skies. She sighed with pleasure. Maybe one day she could even have her wedding there. Hey. Huh? Lin Yi blinked. Weiss was still lost in her daydream when Raven's flat voice snapped her back. Raven's expressionless face was inches away. So you dragged us out here early this morning just to go on a trip? Raven couldn't understand the fuss. Isn't it just going from one place to another? What's so special about that? More than anything, Weiss and Gwen had wrecked her plan to stick to Lin Yi for 3 days and nights, maybe longer. Travel is just the secondary purpose. I'll tell you the real reason later. Weiss softened. Is that so? Raven didn't look convinced. Then what are you waiting for? Go wash up and get ready. Gwen and I will wait here. Lin Yi had already gone into the bathroom to freshen up. Raven followed shortly after to do the same, closing the door behind her. Ah, I'm so jealous, Weiss sighed as the bathroom door clicked shut. Who isn't? Gwen joined her on the sofa, sinking down with a helpless sigh. Why can't I be the one living in a place like this with Lin Yi, spending the night together? Weiss's dramatic sigh made Gwen laugh. If I could spend one night with Lin Yi, I'd do anything. Weiss raised her hands in mock solemnity. Anything? Of course. Weiss's expression turned serious. Even if it meant betraying your family's expectations. Gwen propped her cheek on her palm and smiled faintly, then fell silent. Weiss's face went quiet too. Huh, that's an impossibly hard choice. Can't I have both? Weiss turned to look at Gwen. I don't think your family would accept Jack, someone of unknown background, even if he's handsome. No, they wouldn't. They'd only remind me how much they expect of me, how my future carries the weight of the family, Gwen said, voice small, like everything would collapse without me. As Weiss spoke, a tired helplessness radiated from her. I'm really envious of Raven, she admitted. Envious that she can be with Jack so freely. If only I could be like her, unrestrained, saying what I want, doing what I want, being with the person I love the most. Her smile was thin and bitter. Just be with the person I love the most. Seeing Weiss like that made Gwen's chest ache. She felt the weight of comparison. Raven suited Jack in some ways. Weiss had family ties, competence, beauty, and the means to get what she wanted. What did Gwen have that could compete? She was just an ordinary middle-class girl, neither fabulously wealthy nor strikingly beautiful. She looked at her hands and felt lighter than air. No skills like theirs, no power when Jack faced terrifying enemies. When things went wrong, Jack didn't think of himself first. He thought of the people behind him, the responsibility he carried as a hero. Gwen couldn't be like that. When faced with near-impossible threats, she'd cowered, wanted to run away. So why did she even imagine she could be better than Weiss or Raven? Why pretend she could win Jack's notice? Maybe she should give up, let go of fantasies, and just live her own life well. Without expectations, you wouldn't be hurt by the bad ending that felt destined to come. 35. The Man of the Dynasty. Yes, just as Gwen said, if my family won't allow Jack and me to be together, then no matter how hard I try, what's the point? I look glamorous and confident, but that's only a mask for how fragile I really am. I'm terrified of failing, terrified of losing, so I keep succeeding at all costs. I can't disappoint those who expect things from me. I can't let anyone see the real me, because if they saw how timid and weak I am, who would want me? Everything would leave me. I've always hoped someone truly excellent would appear. Not just someone who looks powerful, but someone strong from the inside. Someone who could let me drop my disguises, hold me, and let me sleep peacefully without a care in the world. Just that. That would be enough. Jack is ridiculous in the best way. He never pretends. He's open about his foolishness and his innocence. He doesn't care how others see him. He knows he's handsome, and he believes it. He admits when he doesn't know something and doesn't try to cover his ignorance to avoid looking silly. He's honest and pure, and at the same time, he respects everyone around him. My confidence is a false shell, but his comes from within, real and flawless. How could someone like me possibly deserve him? Gwen, she's middle class, but she doesn't have any of the small-mindedness people usually ascribe to that background. She's pure, kind, and lively. She follows her heart. Even with a father who doesn't support her, she won't give up her passions or her path. She's strong, smart, beautiful, the kind of girl a lot of boys would like. And if she ever gained great power, she wouldn't use it for herself. She'd use it to help others, to punish evil and reward good, even knowing she'd be hurt for it. She'd choose danger without regret because others need a hero. I can't be like her. Weiss, too. Arrogant, maybe, but she has the right to be. Rich, capable, clever, she openly expresses her feelings for Jack and truly believes she can get what she wants. Between Gwen and Weiss, how can I compete? They're both better suited for Jack in every way, happier, safer choices. They don't have my problem. They won't explode and destroy everything around them if they lose control. What would I bring to Jack? A life that ends too soon? The threat of the world collapsing? The confused, pitying looks from others? Why would he fall for a damn demon girl like me? If he had simply walked past me like everyone else, I wouldn't be in this mess. But he burst into my dim little life and let me taste a forbidden happiness. Jack, if one day I'm forced to leave so you can live, please don't forget me. Weiss and Gwen sat on the sofa, the silence between them thick and awkward. In the bathroom, I closed the door and watched Jack, Lin Yi, brush his teeth. I sighed slowly. Why does everyone love him? Why does everyone want to take him away from me? Why indeed? Because he's utterly charming, because he's genuinely good, unlike me. I'm dark. I push people away with sharp words and bitter smiles. I'm a walking time bomb. One day I might blow up and destroy everything I care about. I don't deserve this luck. I don't deserve him. I edged over and rested my head on Jack's shoulder. He asked. But Jack didn't feel the weight of my feelings. To him, I was just being clingy again. He smiled, freed a hand, and stroked my hair. I tucked those small, warm moments deep inside myself. Jack, meanwhile, had his own simple thoughts. For breakfast, he wanted sweet red bean buns. No, the US doesn't have red bean buns, he thought. Fine, I'll settle for bread with red bean paste. Then he admired himself. So handsome. No wonder all the girls fall for him. Being handsome is a crime. The same uncomplicated vanity, the same easy self-love, truly a dynasty. 36. Is this the privilege of being a girlfriend? I'm so jealous. All right, let's go. Lin Yi stepped out of the washroom feeling surprisingly fresh. He hadn't slept all night, but he was still in high spirits, that reckless confidence of youth. The girls, however, looked like they'd all survived a disaster while he'd been gone. Their faces were suddenly sullen, as if tragedy had struck, and the whole room felt heavy. Lin Yi decided to break the mood. So you all go crazy missing my handsome face after a few minutes, huh? Please, girls, I promise you can stare at it all you want today. Is that not enough? His cheerful voice cut through the gloom like sunlight. Instantly, the sour looks vanished and smiles bloomed in their place. Those sweet expressions Lin Yi loved most. One day isn't enough. I need 2 days, Weiss declared, holding up 2 fingers. And one where I can see you in the middle of the night, someone added playfully. Weiss grinned. Wow, you're greedy. You already have a beauty like Gwen, and you're still thinking about me? Lin Yi teased. Gwen blinked, surprised to be pulled into it, and Weiss laughed, playing along. Of course, a cute girl is essential. She reached out and pinched Gwen's cheek, then added, a cute boy is too. Complete the set. Lin Yi laughed. Weiss really was something. She reminded him of the mischievous girls he used to know. Then how about I throw in a magic girl as well? He pulled Raven forward by the shoulder. How about Raven and I both join your harem? Oh, wonderful. The more the merrier, right, little Raven? Weiss cooed. Raven gave a flat, unimpressed sound. If you can accept that I don't love you at all, sure, then, deadpan. I mean, I'll thoroughly savor your charming, tender body first, and then slowly make your heart mine. It's only a matter of time. Weiss tousled Raven's cheek with a smile. Don't worry, you'll fall for him soon, just like Gwen did. Right, my little darling, Weiss murmured to Gwen with a smirk. Gwen's reply was so perfunctory it was clearly a joke to her. What else could she do? Hey, all right then. Harem, let's go. Breakfast time. Of course, everything's on me. Weiss struck an exaggerated noble pose. Lin Yi, grinning, played along. My Lord Weiss is the best, he cried. My Lord Weiss, I love you, I love you, I love you so much. Lin Yi continued, ramping it up. Weiss's cheeks betrayed her. She turned bright red. Do you really love me that much? She asked, voice trembling. Of course. My Lord Weiss is the greatest, the most beautiful, the sweetest. I'll always love my Lord Weiss. Lin Yi gushed, and Weiss almost swooned. Then, she began, voice small, almost a whisper. I don't think a little kiss would be a problem, would it? Before she could finish, Raven and Gwen each grabbed an arm and hauled her toward the door. Time's almost up. If we keep this up, it'll be lunch instead of breakfast, Raven said dryly. No, let me finish. Weiss protested, but she was dragged out, stammering, while Lin Yi watched her go with a helpless smile and followed after. At the breakfast shop, Weiss propped her chin on her hands and stared at the steaming food in front of her, suddenly with no appetite. What's wrong? Don't you like it? Lin Yi asked around a mouthful of red bean bun. It's delicious, she replied, forcing a smile. It's just... She couldn't explain the flutter in her chest. Lin Yi figured it had to do with what had just almost happened. so he looked at Gwen and Raven for clues. He didn't find answers, but he did see a small streak of sauce on Gwen's cheek. "Hey, Gwen," he said casually. Gwen turned to him. Without thinking, Lin Yi reached out and wiped the food from her cheek with his finger. Gwen froze. Her whole face flushed crimson. Weiss and Raven both went rigid. "That's much better," Lin Yi said, then absent-mindedly brought his finger to his mouth and tasted the smear. Gwen felt like she was going to melt. An indirect kiss, through a dab of sauce, and she was speechless. Raven couldn't stand it. She attacked her breakfast, deliberately getting crumbs on her face, eyes darting to Lin Yi with desperate, glaring hints. "All right, fine," Lin Yi said, smiling helplessly. He leaned toward Raven and, much to everyone's astonishment, used his tongue to clean the crumbs from her cheek. The room went electrified. Weiss and Gwen looked like they'd been struck. Raven, who'd only expected a hand or a cheek wipe, was stunned, but secretly thrilled. What a rush it was to have that kind of bold affection displayed publicly. "All clean," Lin Yi announced, sitting back as if nothing unusual had happened. Gwen and Weiss exchanged a conspiratorial look and hatched the exact same plan. Suddenly ravenous, they attacked their food like starving wolves, smearing themselves with sauce and crumbs. Then they began batting their eyelashes at Lin Yi like they were telegraphing a silent SOS. Raven rolled her eyes in disgust, flicked her wrist, and used a small charm to produce a tissue. She marched over and wiped both of them off with a flat tone. "Hey! No!" Weiss and Gwen protested, deflating at once and collapsing onto the table. "Is this girlfriend privilege?" Weiss muttered, staring at Lin Yi with a mix of envy and resignation. "I'm so jealous," Gwen echoed, very much meaning it. 37. "Love genius. Please, please, I beg you, let me be your girlfriend too. I can't take it anymore." Weiss's little heart, terrified of loss, finally broke. She looked up at Lin Yi with tear-streaked cheeks, pleading with everything she had. "I want to feel your love too, even if it's just a little. Please, let me taste it." She was willing to throw dignity away to get what she wanted. She couldn't accept losing him. In her eyes, Lin Yi was a unique, irreplaceable jewel. There was only one like him in the world. She couldn't bear to miss him, to let him go. She was even willing to share him with others, as long as she could still see him, touch him, so he wouldn't disappear from her life. That, to her, would be enough. Lin Yi had long since read Weiss. Her humble, pleading act was the last act of someone used to always getting what she wanted. People who had never learned to lose didn't know how to accept defeat. Weiss was like a gambler who would stake everything for the one thing she loved. Most people pursued money. For Weiss, who'd grown up surrounded by wealth, money meant little. Material things were trivial. What mattered to her were rare qualities: Gwen's kindness, the sincerity in Lin Yi's goofiness. Those she treasured. Seeing how some people would sell everything for wealth, Weiss had come to revere kindness and purity all the more. That reverence had metastasized into possessiveness. Lin Yi watched it crystallize into something dangerous. When desire had always been satisfied, the first real loss could drive a person to extremes. He could imagine the worst: a descent into madness, efforts to bind him forever, a life spent trying to force the world back to the way she expected. He knew how people who'd never failed before clawed at the idea of giving up. It wasn't in their vocabulary. To them, a true loss felt like death. Better to do something irreversible than live as a failed version of themselves. He had already played that ending in his head, down to the hollow despair of despair itself. He was a human deduction machine, the potential bad ending lined up, grim and obvious. So he decided to diffuse it. He smiled and turned the scene on its head. "What are you talking about, Weiss?" he said, light and teasing. "I'm already a member of your harem. If you don't break up with me, how can I agree to be your boyfriend again?" Weiss froze. Lin Yi's counter had the precise mix of irony and bluster to take the sting out of her plea. If she laughed it off, she could call it a joke. If she pushed, he'd match her. Either way, she couldn't lose. Her face crumpled, then a desperate, delighted grin bloomed. "I love you so much. I would even serve myself and RWBY to you." Lin Yi went on, scooping up RWBY with exaggerated devotion. "Anything you want. You can do whatever you like with me and RWBY." Weiss's jaw nearly hit the floor. "Really?" she squeaked. "Of course," Lin Yi said, half serious, half playing. No one could tell where the line was. least of all Weiss, RWBY, and even Gwen. The absurdity of it all loosened them. For example, my lady Weiss, shall we feed you breakfast? He speared a piece of pastry with a fork and held it out. Please. Weiss blinked, then laughed in stunned delight. Oh, of course. She let Lin Yi feed her, and the simple intimacy of it, food offered and accepted, felt like magic. Lin Yi didn't stop there. He took RWBY's small hand, speared another pastry, and chirped, Princess Weiss, here comes the little train. Blushing, RWBY and Weiss both turned crimson. The moment was embarrassingly tender, but blissful. With Lin Yi gently guiding them, Weiss parted her lips and accepted the pastry from RWBY as well. The sight of the three of them in that ridiculous fairy tale tableau had Gwen smiling despite herself. You see, it doesn't feel bad, right? Lin Yi teased, propping his cheek with his hand as he watched the girls. They both felt strange at first, then warm. The playful, almost innocent intimacy loosened something in RWBY too. She watched Weiss eat the treat she'd offered. The vibration in her fingers when Weiss took the pastry felt unexpectedly lovely. The way Weiss looked, like a snow princess from a fairy story, made RWBY's heart flutter. Maybe Weiss wasn't so insufferable, after all. Maybe sharing wasn't the end of the world. A tiny, unexpected switch flipped inside her. Gwen, encouraged by Lin Yi, couldn't help but join. All right, you're all in the harem now. Are you just going to watch? Come on, Gwen. You should serve Princess Weiss too, Lin Yi coaxed with an inviting smile. Gwen hesitated for only a second before giving in. Soon she was feeding Weiss small, delicate bites as well. The four of them laughed and fumbled through the mock ceremony, the whole thing ridiculous and tender in equal measure. Weiss looked from one face to another, handsome, gentle, silly, feeling like she had floated up to heaven. A tear of complete, fulfilled happiness rolled down her cheek and fell, a tiny testament to how perfectly, absurdly content she felt in that ridiculous, perfect moment. 38. Lin Yi's special mission and Weiss's super Versailles. Lin Yi felt like a walking strategy machine. Lately, every time he glanced at someone, a little favorability bar seemed to pop up above their head. He was a god of dating sims in real life. Even so, he couldn't wrap his head around it. How had three top-tier beauties fallen for him so fast? In most gal games, the protagonist had to grind for days to win anyone over, but Weiss and Gwen had practically thrown themselves at him for no reason. It was absurd. So the real purpose of this trip is to investigate your family's history? Gwen asked Weiss, trying to pin down what they were really doing. Yes, Weiss replied. More precisely, it's the truth and history behind inscriptions. Our family is only a small part of a much bigger story. Weiss's smile widened as she explained. Inscriptions are like a form of magic. Our Schnee family is born with a sensitivity to gems. That gives us a huge advantage in finding gemstones and crafting valuable jewelry. And it's the inscriptions we've mastered that make that possible, Gwen said, eyes shining. No wonder your family is so wealthy, Raven murmured. Humph, Weiss said, a touch proud. We don't just get rich. We can harness the power in different gems and use it. We can fight with it. So you're rich and dangerous, Lin Yi summarized. Exactly, Weiss said. If you're wealthy but can't protect yourself, you're just a lamb waiting for someone else to take it. Strength makes people listen. Lin Yi nodded. The premise of being heard is simple. You have to be stronger than those who would silence you. Weiss brightened at that. Gwen tilted her head. If we uncover more of this history, will the Schnee family become stronger? Of course, Weiss said, excitement growing. What we know now is only a speck. If we can find more inscriptions, the power and creations we could access would be on a different scale. Maybe the power to move mountains, fill seas, even things like the secret to immortality wouldn't seem quite so far-fetched. Sounds like you're hunting 12 talismans or something, Lin Yi joked. You guys aren't fighting Shendu, are you? Weiss laughed. I was thinking the exact same thing. Do you watch Jackie Chan Adventures too? Gwen puffed out her chest. Of course. Uncle Long is my idol. I learned a lot of my moves from him, parkour, fighting techniques. Honestly, put me in a furniture store and I'll take on 10 supermen. Lin Yi snorted. 10 supermen in a furniture store? That's a pretty specific flex, Gwen preened. In a furniture store, who can beat me besides Uncle Long? Raven looked puzzled. Who's Jackie Chan? She hadn't had much time for movies. Being terrorized by her demon father left little room for cartoons. Lin Yi chuckled. He's one of China's most famous movie stars, right up there with Bruce Lee. My favorite idol, too. Raven blinked. But isn't Ezio your mentor? Lin Yi grinned. A person can have many mentors. Jackie Chan and Ezio are both huge influences for me. Which one do you like more? Raven asked. The question was obviously a trap. How do you pick between two heroes? It's impossible to choose, Lin Yi said. They both taught me different things. Both hold the most important places for me. Weiss leaned forward. What's the most important thing they taught you? Lin Yi thought for a moment. Too many things to list, but two lines stand out. From Jackie Chan, there's the idea of being proud of who you've become, of taking responsibility. From Ezio, there's his lesson that you can't truly defeat your enemies if what drives you is only revenge and hatred. He met their eyes. In the darkest moments, those words kept me going. They helped me understand the weight of responsibility. The three girls looked at him, a subtle new respect settling in their expressions. Despite his youth, Lin Yi carried a presence that hinted at past wounds. At that moment, a notification popped up in Lin Yi's vision, brief, stark. The system had thrown a new quest into his bar, those scars. There was no description, no objective, no completion status, only the title, lingering like a fragment. Lin Yi frowned. It made no sense. What he didn't realize was that this quest wasn't meant for him. The system had issued it as a hidden mission tied to the people around him. When certain conditions were met, someone nearby could trigger and complete it. It was difficult, absurdly so. To finish it would require near superhuman stats or an almost impossible set of circumstances. In short, the quest named Lin Yi as the boss. For now, though, that mystery could wait. They pulled up in front of the Schnee mansion. When the car doors opened, everyone gaped. The estate was vast and ornate, a palace of polished stone and sweeping roofs that made even a billionaire's home feel modest. Wow, Gwen breathed. This is your place? It's huge, Raven said. Weiss gave a small, satisfied smile. It's all right. Compared to Balmoral Castle, though, it's still a little inferior. The three of them stared. Weiss's casual comparison to the Queen of Britain's Balmoral made them pause. Rich people, it seemed, used a different scale for ordinary. Accelerating the process of becoming a mummy? That would be interesting, Lin Yi thought wryly. Get ready. Once we get the relic key from that super mage, we have to leave right away, Weiss said, hands on her hips as she led the way. Gwen and Raven were already craning their necks, admiring the opulent corridor. Why wouldn't Lin Yi come forward? Raven murmured. Lin Yi only shrugged. He was putting on airs. A super mage, huh? Weiss snorted. To be honest, apart from Raven, I don't know who else in this place could be called that. Lin Yi's teasing compliment made Raven want to loop her arm through his. She flushed and tried to act composed. I'm not that amazing yet. Not for now. He's famous, Weiss said, waving a hand. I think even in your world he'd be the kind of guy who gets a comic series. Oh. Lin Yi's eyes brightened. That super mage is in there? I'll recognize him, huh? Weiss nodded. They stopped at a door and entered the Schnee family library. Shelves groaned under books and ancient inscription scrolls passed down for generations. In the center of the room, a man in the robes of a sorcerer supreme floated, studying a glowing white inscription history scroll. Lin Yi looked up and blurted, Sherlock Holmes! The shout startled the man, who slowly rolled up the scroll, floated down, and walked toward them. What an entrance, he said with a wry smile. Well met, I must say, very flattering. I do take fan mail. Lin Yi, suddenly fangirling, grinned. When you're dressed like that, call me Dr. Strange. Stephen Strange raised an eyebrow and corrected him gently. Please call me Dr. Strange. Weiss and Gwen burst out laughing at the mix-up, while Raven looked between them, puzzled. What? Who decided he looks like Sherlock Holmes? Lots of people say that, Stephen admitted with a shrug and a faint smile. He listened to their chatter, and then, as the conversation turned, Lin Yi asked the question everyone was curious about. So what's your relationship with Dr. Fate? Ha! He and I keep to our own corners, Strange said. Busy with our own work. We're not enemies, but we're not close friends either. Ah, Lin Yi said, intrigued. I figured the two strongest doctors might be competing for the title. The title of strongest is empty if you can't use that power to protect anything, Stephen replied quietly. Either of us could be called the strongest, but what good is it? Besides, I've beaten him at a few things, so why not let him keep the title for now? He said that last bit with a grin that betrayed his pride. Lin Yi noticed Stephen's sudden seriousness. You don't seem like you belong to this world, Stephen told him. Your soul, it doesn't fit entirely. Are there many like me here? Lin Yi asked. There are more than one, and also fewer than one, Stephen said with a smile. The universe is full of wonders. Different existences will appear. The real question is how you choose your path. Lin Yi felt the conversation deepening. You haven't already used the time stone to see my futures, have you? Stephen's expression was unreadable. I've looked. I know what you're thinking, and some of what you'll do next. So then why study inscription scrolls if you can see the future? Lin Yi pressed. Because I follow the future, Stephen said. The time stone shows only slivers. I can't see everything. There are unknowns, threads the stone doesn't reveal. I still need to study the inscription myself. And Dr. Fate? Lin Yi asked. Stephen sighed and chuckled. We're different. I don't believe in complete neutrality between us. There are things we share and things we don't. And yes, I've bested him in many respects, but we're not enemies. There was a tiny pause, and then Stephen reached out and traced a white inscription in the air. It flowed like pale light into Weiss, merging with her. There. The key has been given. Have a good weekend trip. Now please, try to be quiet. He floated back up, opened the history scroll again, and fell into study. The group exchanged helpless looks and slipped out as quietly as they could. Inside Stephen's mind, another voice echoed, calm, amused. Dr. Fate. The gears of fate have started to turn, the other voice said. I didn't expect it to be so straightforward this time. Stephen almost laughed. What did you see? It's like the pity counter hit 10 in a row, 5-star after 5-star, Fate said. A miracle of probabilities. A 5-star, 5-cost unit, another voice agreed. Mind-boggling. It's appeared openly, undeniably, Fate said. Now all we can do is watch. Outside the library, Raven finally spoke again. That was him, Dr. Strange? She asked. You can also call him Wan Fu, Lin Yi said suddenly, and the name made Raven blink. Wan Fu? Raven echoed. Why that? Because he's the curly-haired Holmes, Lin Yi said with a grin. Oh, Weiss and Gwen chimed in. That's perfect. We'll call him that behind his back. Raven's expression shifted. He's on a whole other level with magic. Maybe he could teach me to control what's inside me. He definitely could give pointers, Gwen agreed. Lin Yi smirked at the idea and muttered, if that really happens, I could, every day. Raven's face went a shade of red as her thoughts wandered. Weiss and Gwen blinked at the suggestive half-sentence and pressed her. Every day what? Weiss demanded, leaning in. Yeah, every day what? Gwen joined, eyes sharp. Raven stammered, no, nothing. She straightened up, flustered. But Weiss and Gwen's curiosity had been provoked. With their investigative instincts, secrets rarely stayed hidden long. As Lin Yi watched Raven recover, a small, guilty thought flickered through his mind. If they ever knew the truth, and if any of this sped up Raven's blushes and missteps, accelerating the process of becoming a dried-up corpse, well, that would make things very interesting. This is the real enjoyment. A private jet, a luxurious private jet. Lin Yi couldn't contain his grin. This was something else. Was this how the rich lived, constantly snacking on treats aboard a private plane and watching the newest films in 4K? He felt like he might float away from happiness. What? The new Zootopia 2? No way. This is priceless. I didn't expect to hit something this good after transmigrating to another world. Watching a movie that hasn't even been released yet, one of the girls squealed. Lin Yi nearly passed out from excitement when he saw the premiere being shown on the plane. After the girls had their favorite snacks, they all clustered around him. Do you really like this movie? He asked. Like it? What kind of question is that? Weiss beamed. Who in this world doesn't love Zootopia? Is there anyone? Gwen chimed in. Girl, all the Disney princes combined don't come close to Nick Wilde's value. He's basically me in animated form, Zero added with a laugh. Lin Yi's comparison set off another round of laughter. Nick Wilde's great, but I'm not really into furries, Weiss said tactfully. Besides, I think you're way better looking than Nick Wilde. Whoa, Weiss, really? Lin Yi's heart did a little jump. The compliment landed straight in his chest. Of course, Weiss said without a hint of hesitation. My dear little ice princess, come here, give me a kiss. Moved, Lin Yi leaned forward and kissed Weiss. The effect was exaggerated and immediate. Weiss melted. To his surprise, Zero didn't protest at all. Things were getting interesting. Actually, I think you're miles ahead of Nick Wilde too, Zero said. Me too. Me too, Gwen added, and the two of them showered Lin Yi with praise. Having girls like you is the happiest thing in my life, Lin Yi declared, grinning. All right, I've decided I'm kissing every one of you, he joked, and the mood turned playfully scandalous. They munched snacks, watched the Ultra HD premiere of Zootopia 2, and enjoyed the private jet luxury. Lin Yi sat in the middle with Weiss and Gwen leaning on his shoulders, and Zero stretched out across their laps, sideways, while Lin Yi absent-mindedly stroked her head. This, he thought, was how to enjoy life. The movie ended and they arrived at their destination, Salar de Uyuni, Bolivia. Even from the distance, the salt flats glimmered like a mirror to the sky. Wow, it's beautiful, Zero breathed. Only now did Gwen understand what Weiss had meant when she said holding a wedding here would be the greatest fortune of a life. This place, I'd choose it as my final resting place after being beaten, disfigured, and bleeding by a supervillain, unable to rise again, Gwen said with her usual dramatic flair. Lin Yi snorted. A bit melodramatic, don't you think? How about we get married here sometime? Hey, that should be my line. Gwen protested. Weiss stuck out her lip. You stole my line. Sorry, baby. First come, first served. But don't worry, I'll put you in the prettiest wedding dress ever, Lin Yi teased. Weiss listened, pouted, then relented with a small smile. The guide, a local man in a cowboy hat, watched them with an amused sigh and the private bemusement of someone thinking youth is ridiculous and wonderful. Under the guide's direction, they piled into an off-road vehicle and drove onto the flats. It was the rainy season, the best time to see the Salar, so there were plenty of tourists, something Lin Yi noted with a small grimace. No wonder, this is peak season, he said. We need to be discreet about our task, Gwen murmured. She still thought their search into inscription history should be kept secret. The guide knows, Weiss said. He'll help clear a space so we can work. Good. Gwen relaxed a bit. They reached the most scenic spot and changed into waterproof boots. Stepping onto the shallow, reflective salt water, the breeze brushed over their faces. The vast, perfect horizon smoothed away any remaining worries. Gwen closed her eyes and smiled, feeling Lin Yi close behind her. With a playful flourish, she threw her arms back and pretended to fall. Hey, Lin Yi reached out and caught her. Are you planning to lie in the water? If you soak your clothes, you'll have nothing to change into. Humph, you have clothes too, don't you? Gwen shot back. Good heavens, are you trying to make me strip? Lin Yi laughed, looking at her delighted face. Weiss, white hair rippling in the breeze, looked between them and asked, hand on her hip, do we want to play for a while, or start our mission now? Let's finish the mission first. I want to enjoy this place properly afterward, Gwen said. Zero agreed. Mr. Santos, please keep the other tourists away later. We're about to start working, Weiss told the guide. Understood, he said, tipping his hat as he set about creating a cordon. Weiss reached into her ornate waist pouch, then stopped. Oh, I forgot my sword. She jogged back to the vehicle, grabbed her rapier, and ran back. Everything was ready. Weiss drew a small gem from her pouch, took a breath, and began to draw power through it. She lifted her rapier and started shaping the inscription array. The lost inscription ruins were about to reveal themselves.